CFMoto has been in the country for just about 2 years now, in the year 2020. And despite being a relatively young brand in the Philippine market, they've made quite a name for themselves with the affordable big bikes, the NK series. And today we've got not one but two of their bigger brothers, the 400 GT and 650 GT. It's time to go beyond the ride.
The CFMoto 650 GT comes equipped with the brand's 180-degree parallel twin that has a displacement of 649.3 cc's and is capable of producing 61.7 horses at 9,000 RPM and 58.5 newton-meters of torque at 7,000 RPM. Meanwhile, the 400 GT also gets a 180-degree parallel twin with 400.4 cc's of displacement and 41 horsepower at 9,500 RPM. and 34.4 newton-meters of torque at 7,650 RPM. Both bikes get a set of hydraulic J1 dual discs up front and a single caliper and disc at the rear coupled with ABS. Also for both bikes, the front wheels and tires are 120 by 70 on 17s, while the rear is a 160 by 60 17. Both bikes have the same sizes, but the 400 gets Adreno Sports, while the 650 gets a nice set of Metzlers, which are grippier. The suspension setup is brought on by the KYB front and rear springs and shocks. The front forks measure in at 38 millimeters, while the rear is composed of a cantilever system, which CFMoto promises a lightweight and agile ride. The 19-liter fuel tank is massive, both in size and capacity. In traffic, you can expect about 18 kilometers per liter on the 650. Slightly better at about 20 with the 400. On the highway though, the figures are more or less the same, hitting around the 25 kilometers per liter mark. In the cockpit, you get a 5-inch TFT display that shows your speedometer, tachometer, gear indicator, trip meter, temperature, and fuel level, as well as a clock, all in one easy-to-read and vibrant display. It also switches between day and night mode automatically. In its default display, it has a touring mode, and if you want to increase the sharpness, flip it to sport mode. Other touches include 2 USB charging sockets and a 12-volt outlet, perfect for long rides. But even more unexpected are the backlit switchgear, which isn't necessary, but is a nice touch to make the experience a little more special. It's in the middle ground of a sport bike with a bit of ADV into the mix, which is a good thing if you're into that, and quite frankly, I don't think there's another model in the market quite like it, especially at this price point. More on that in a bit. Though some of us at the office would argue that you get more than what you pay for. In practice, the bike feels very well put together. It's not clunky, the controls are nicely weighted, and the buttons are clicky. There's a bit of flimsiness going on with the plastics, but it isn't that noticeable unless you're really poking at it. Overall, it's very, very decent and quite eye-catching while in the matte concept blue paint.
The front of the GT is a little bulbous, and it is quite modern with the LED projector headlights and of course the adjustable windscreen, which comes in very handy when you are on the expressway. Now, one of the selling points of the bike is the seat height. It's 795 millimeters, and at 5'6", I can nearly flat foot the bike. However, if you're the size of a, let's say, Cacoterona, it might look like an ADV. The 650 GT and the 400 GT have an identical wet weight of 226 kilograms. That is just about 500 pounds, which is pretty heavy. So imagine yourself on these bikes riding in city traffic. Probably not the best situation to be in. However, when you're on the expressway, that weight will come in handy because of the stability. Alright, so since we have two bikes and only one of me, we decided to bring in Earl Not the teenage girl, but Earl. He's gonna be on the 400 and I'm gonna be on the 650. And later on, we're gonna switch.
A hallmark of sport tours. You do get a slightly lean over position, but it doesn't detract from the comfort. However, when the situation calls for it, you can lean forward behind the windshield and rest your chest on the tank, kind of like a sport bike. You can sit upright like a standard, or even stand without much issue. The bars are wide and give you enough leverage. And these ergonomics help a lot, especially since the 650 and 400 both weigh the same. Speaking of the 400, how's that little bike, Earl?
Well, not as short as you. Anyway, if you're a taller rider, piloting these bikes would be very easy because you can just flat foot them. And on the first day that I got it, I actually went through Friday rush hour traffic on C5 and EDSA. And I have to say, it'll get tiring if you try to muscle the weight of the bike around, but then again, practice makes perfect, so finesse it. As a daily commuter, it won't work, but at least the engines are pretty smooth.
Of course we're not in the city. Do you see any buildings? Duh. Anyway, you know why you were struggling in the city? You need to get yourself in the gym. You need to put a little bit of weight on. It pulls pretty well and has a pretty beefy mid-range, and you get top-end rush. How about the 400?
Well, let's be honest, on the highway, I would have wanted that extra bit of displacement. Really had to shave me a gear shift or two. But at least I have this nice slipper clutch, like what you have.
Now, I have to say, these bikes aren't very flickable. You do have to commit to leaning if you're cornering hard, because the bike feels like all it wants to do is stay upright, especially if you're a lighter rider. You might have to lean off the bike when in attack mode. All right, Earl, it's raining. I have a mesh jacket on and a riding jersey. I am cold.
What? What'd you say? You're old?
I said cold with a C. Cold. Malamig. But you know what? I think it's time for us to switch bikes. I want to try the 400. Okay, now being on the 400, I kind of get what Earl is saying, that you need to wring the engine out a little bit more and bang on the gears. But you know, you still get the same slipper clutch as there is on the 650, the same 6-speed transmission, so it's still a fun ride, minus the hefty mid-range grunt. However, it's raining, so I don't really care how much power I have right now. I just want to just chill and relax on the way home.
Given that these bikes have the same weight and all, I'd pick the 650, definitely.
Agreed. But honestly, the 400 isn't that bad. Not at all.
After spending some time with both bikes, I have to say that they perform better than we thought they would. And they were a lot of fun once we got out of the city and onto the expressway. And if you think about it, they're a great bargain. You can get the 400 GT for 267,000 Philippine pesos and the 650 for 335,000 Philippine pesos. That's a lot of bike for not that high a price. And if I were to choose one, I'd go with this. The 650. It's the same weight, it's got the same features, but it's got more muscle. For more information about these bikes and some great deals on other MCs, log on to www.motodeal.com.ph. This has been Gene Rufino. Hope you guys enjoyed going beyond the ride.